One of the things that most farmers do late in the season here, it gets to the end of the year right after harvest, they go out with deep tillage. Darren, do you think that's a good idea?
Well, put me right on the spot there. You know, when you think about doing deep tillage versus no-till, for example, there are some guys that believe in either system, and I think both can be effective. Let's talk about deep till and what you may use it for. First of all, if you've got compaction issues, that's the quickest way to clean that problem up. And frankly, if you've got some deep compaction, you can talk about cover crops and they're definitely going to help. Freeze and thaw will help a little tiny bit, but really, you've got to get out there with iron and get it done.
Okay, well, let's step back just a little bit. How are you going to first identify that you have that deep compaction?
One of the ways you can do it is just take a look at your yield maps and you see, wow, how come my yield just stinks in these parts of the field?
Well, that's possible. That could be one of the causes.
During the summer is you fly over your fields and you take a look. You can see every pattern that you drove in that field. That has to tell you something.
Yeah, but that's the shallow compaction that we're talking about, and this is exactly the whole point, and that's why I kind of set Darren up there. There isn't a way that you can just look at the field and say, oh, I've got deep compaction. You've got to dig around a little bit. So what we've done on our own farm is we've gone out and dug actual root pits. We'll go out with a skid steer loader, or for that matter, even a backhoe, and just dig a little bit, and then we'll take a knife right in the side of that hole, and we'll go up and down with that knife and find out where we have really hard layers. Typically what we're finding is we've got certainly the traffic patterns, we've got the tillage that we've done over the years that's usually in the range of 6 to 10 inches deep, something like that. But then also we find what's called a natural compaction layer that's down somewhere in that 14 to 22 inch range. And if we can go out with some deep tillage and not just get through the first layer, but get through that deeper layer as well, we can get a lot of roots going way down deep into the ground. We've had very good success with that on our farm, and I think that's one of the reasons why our yields have increased as much as they have over the last few years.
Hold on here, hold on. I don't want to rip up that lower compaction layer. If we dig up our soil and till everything and flip it all over down 18 or 22 inches, number one, you're probably going to bring up some subsoil, but number two, you want to leave some sort of a base out there so when you're driving in the spring, you don't just sink like crazy. So what I like to do is just use a straight shank. We put ours at 30-inch spacings and we go down about 20 or 22 inches. That allows us to make some slots down through that deep compaction layer and leave most of it intact. So we can drive through there, have a nice base in the spring, yet our roots can still slip through and get moisture late in the season, or nutrients potentially too.
Yeah, and the whole key here, and the reason why we're talking about this, is we want to be able to farm as much of our ground as possible. And I'm not talking about horizontally, I'm talking about vertically. We need to get down deep, because just think about it, if your roots are only growing in an 8-inch area of soil, how good could your crops be if your roots were growing in, let's say, a 3-foot area of soil? We want to go down as deep as we possibly can. Not only is there a little more moisture there late in the summer, but a lot of times there can be some nutrients there that we can possibly extract later on as well.
Okay, let's talk about some other purposes of this tillage. Besides compaction, we've also got residue to deal with. The field that we're standing next to, we've got roughly 200 bushel corn. We've got all the stalks out there. What are you going to do when you want to get back in there? What kind of tillage is that?
Well, let me just first say that one of the things we've switched over to on our farm is a chopping corn head, and I would strongly encourage you to do that. I like it in no-till, I like it in strip till, I like it in conventional till, and I realized that 5-10 years ago, a lot of people were saying, you know, leave your stalks tall if you're no-tilling. We've tried that. I just personally do not like that as well. We have a lot more problem with hairpinning residue. The residue doesn't break down as quickly. We prefer to get that stuff cut down a little closer to ground level and get it all chopped up with that chopping corn head. So I think that's the first step. But when it comes to this deep tillage, you know, if you're going to bury residue, well, now you're talking about something different than running out there with the straight shank. So all I'm saying here is I would look at the deep tillage separate from the residue discussion that Darren's bringing up. I would do that deep tillage, and then I might do some disking in some cases, or I might just be happy with going out with a Salford machine, you know, basically just some light tillage. Something like that would be just fine, as long as you've got that chopping corn head.
All right, when we're talking about that residue, you know, there's a couple of things. First of all, with that chopping corn head or with some kind of tillage that you're doing, we're trying to size that residue so it's going to flow through with your planter, with your trash managers out in front of your planter, or just if you're going to till it up. If you want to bury it, you can't take big long stalks and till that up. It just doesn't work very well. So by sizing it up, that's a good thing. With a Salford or doing some deep tillage, getting some dirt mixed around or some soil mixed around on that stalk is going to help break break it down more quickly.
Well, once again, I guess in summary here, what we're talking about is we want you to consider doing some deep tillage. Take a look at what you have for compaction down in your ground in both what they consider the plow pan and the natural compaction layer. Try to get below both with a straight shank, just cutting some slices out there so you don't lose your base. You can get some roots down deep in the ground. And again, that's not really doing a whole lot to address residue or anything else. We're mainly talking about compaction here.
Well, the other thing that won't do, Brian, is it won't control our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?